All right, Shalom Israel. First and foremost, as always, I would like to give all praises, honor, glory, respect, and blessings to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachaha, Kodash. Salutations to the Lord's elect on the four corners of the earth, pushing His truth and sincerity while patiently waiting for Yahweh Shai's return. And as always, double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone, which have taught us everything we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. And I wanted to do a walk and talk today on how conveniency is going to lead a lot of people to taking the mark of the beast. Now, if you don't know what the mark of the beast is, the mark of the beast is the CHIP. It is even the RFID CHIP. The RFID CHIP. All right, put two and two together, all right? And basically, you may ask, what is conveniency? You know? Well, conveniency is something that makes things easier for you. No, Salakia for the loud noise in the background. Okay. Conveniency is something that makes life easier for you. If there's something out there that makes things easier for you, it would be convenient for you to use it more often, right? So, like for an example, you might be working on the roof of the house. And I'm not saying, workers are this stupid. I'm just giving you an example of conveniency, even though some people really are that stupid. But we're talking about people here in America who have the lowest IQ on the planet. Americans have the lowest IQ on the planet. But okay, here's an example of conveniency, so you can understand or better understand what conveniency is. Somebody might be working on the roof of a house, and every day when the worker comes in to work on the roof of the house, he literally has to jump, climb, and toil, being damn near out of breath, just to he has to jump on the bar, he has to pull himself up, he might have to climb up another bar or whatever, pull himself up, and by the time he gets to the roof of the house, he's tired, he's out of breath, and he might have to take a 5-minute break before he can officially get started, and after a while it starts to wear and tear on his arms because every day he has to jump up to a bar, he has to pull himself up, he has to toil, he has to labor, he has to work, sweat, just to get to the roof of the house. So, basically, after a while, he gets tired of it. And he's like, man, something's got to change. So what happens? He goes and he buys a ladder. And when he buys the ladder, right, he finds out that because of this ladder, it is easier for him to get to the roof of the house because all he has to do is walk up a couple of steps and bam, he's there. No sweat, doesn't require him to have to pull himself up using his body weight. That ladder made it very convenient for him to do his job because all he had to do was walk up a couple of steps, and just like that, look, you can see the shadow from the clouds literally overshadowing the parking lot. Looks pretty cool, but you know, the Lord's creations. But that ladder made it convenient for me. It made his job easier. So you see, conveniency is something that makes life easier for you. I'll give you another example of conveniency. Okay. Let's see. A guy who's really strong, you know. A woman is traveling with a guy. He's 6 foot. He's very strong, right? And one day, she gets a flat tire. So, you know, they both have to get out the car. You know, the woman is at a loss as to how she's going to change this flat tire. So the guy that's with her, that's very strong, decides to get out the car. You know, he uses his muscle to lift up the right side of the car. And while he's lifting and holding up the right side of the car, the woman is able to, you know, get her tools out, you know, take the bolts, the screws out, change the tire, and then bam, once the tire is changed, the guy puts the car back down. However, by the time he put the car back down, he's tired, he's out of breath. So in order to save the strong guy, you know, energy, time, you know, she decides to get a car jack, you know, and the next time she ended up getting a flat tire, the car jack made it convenient for her to change her tire. She didn't have to worry about, you know, someone getting tired, you know, accidentally dropping the car because they ran out of energy. She didn't have to worry about any of that. With the car jack, the car was able to stay in one place. Nobody was holding the car, and bam, both energies were preserved. So the car jack made it convenient for them to change their tire. So conveniency is basically things that make life easier for you. And we can see how this society became more and more convenient and dependent on technology as time passed. When you go back to, let's just say, even the early 1900s, you know, computers and libraries did not exist, you know. And when I say the early 1900s, I'm talking about 1905, 1904, you know. I'm talking, you know, 1907, the early 1900s, okay? Around those times, computers did not exist. Smartphones did not exist. Self-driving cars did not exist. Okay? You didn't have computers in libraries. You know, you didn't have robots. You didn't have AI that could speak back to you. When you did your research, you literally had to go to a library and look for particular books. Okay? And you literally had to read through it. You couldn't just, you know, open up a book and, oh, bam, that's what that's talking about and such and such and such and such. No. You literally had to read through the book. You had to look for particular points, particular talking points in order to accumulate knowledge to build up your knowledge and understanding of what you was researching in particular. You know? Hell, even phones did not exist back then, you know? They had something called a telephone. Okay, how many people out there know about the telephone or well, some people say telephone, some people say telephone, but a telephone was basically where, you know, it would be a phone that was connected to a tube designed to allow sound to travel through. So that way, you know, like how they show you in particular movies, when When the guy would take the speaker of the telephone off the hook, you know, he'll begin you know, turning and spinning this handle while speaking into it. And then, you know, that the guy, you know, the guy that was across, you know, that was from a far distance in the building, you know, he would pick up the telephone, he would put it to his ear, and he was actually able to hear what the guy through the speaker was saying. So telephones originally started off with, you know, phone speakers being connected to tubes that allowed for sound to travel through. That's why it was called the telephone, because sound was traveling through the tubes. You know, because words is what? Air, sound. Okay, traveling through the tubes, so the message could get out. Now, telephones originally started off in business buildings. Okay, houses did not have telephones. But like it tells you in the book of Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, right? Many shall run to and fro, and what? Knowledge shall be increased. So right before you know it, as knowledge progressed from the early 1900s, they started to develop phones that actually allowed you to talk to people from long distance. However, you know, wires were still included. You know, they would have what was called telephone wires, you know, because all of the old-fashioned houses used to have them. The telephone wire would be connected to a particular component of your house. That way, if your particular number was dialed, your phone would know to ring. And when you pick it up, you know, you would answer it, and, you know, somebody could be in a different part of the city talking to you. You see? So as many ran to and fro, knowledge became increased, you know. And at around that time, cars were being developed, old-fashioned cars, you know, big wheels, you know, dorky looking, you know, ran on gas. And this was the early 1900s, right? And then, you know, around the mid 1900s, they started developing more advanced cars that had antennas on it. Through the antenna, you could listen to radio broadcasts. You could listen to music that was being played through certain stations. Through what? Antennas, satellites. Because the satellites acted as beacons to send out signals to the antennas of old-fashioned radios, old-fashioned cars. You see? And this was all done through what? Telepathic communications. Through satellites, from satellites. Now I'm talking about satellite dishes, because I remember houses used to have satellite dishes built on top of them, which made it possible for what? For people to watch, you know, television. Again, television. Everything was tele back then, because this was the beginning of technology being developed. You know, because before cars, there was what? There was horses and carriages. But anyways, you know, television. You know, your television allowed you to watch shows, news broadcasts, and various different things through what? Through your TV, which old-fashioned TVs had what? Antennas. Just like how cars had antennas. Just like how radios used to have antennas, right? The satellite from these different businesses, which was broadcasting these various things, such as radio talk hosts and TV shows, these satellites would send out those signals to the antennas of the desired device or object, and that through that antenna, your device was able to communicate with the signals that the satellites were sending out. You see? And those were old-fashioned TVs when they used to have black and white color in them. You know, this was back then when people used to watch soccer. You know, people had a problem with watching soccer because, you know, the TV was black and white, right? And since the old-fashioned soccer balls were all white, they decided to develop new soccer balls with black spots on it, so that it would be easier to see the soccer ball whenever it was being kicked or moved around. That was because of black and white TVs. A lot of people don't know that though, you know, because TVs used to only display shows and things like that, movies, you name it, in black and white. But people were still able to watch shows from across the cities and whatnot. And then, you know, and going past the mid 1900s, we started seeing what? VCRs. You know, through VCRs, being able to communicate with your television, you was able to watch VHS tapes, right? You was able to watch VHS tapes. You know, they started developing more advanced radios that can play music through old-fashioned tapes that you would put in your radio, and it would literally play the music or the sound that was recorded on the tape, showing you that the book of Habakkuk, the second chapter, is very valid when it says knowledge shall be increased. You know, because how else is it possible to play music or sound from a tape that's being put inside of a radio? Through knowledge being increased, through experimentations, through toil, labor, studying, intelligence, you know, research. You know, this is how, you know, singers, rappers, or whatnot was able to record their sound bites, their musics or whatnot. They would record it on, you know, some special type of plastic that was able to record and save sound or music that was put on it. That way you could play it from your tape. This is how music was done the old-fashioned way. This was past the mid 1900s. Okay, and then going into the late 1900s, we're talking, you know, 1980, we're talking 1999 into the late 1900s, they had color TV. Okay, they had color TV. And let me remind you that TVs back in the old days were box TVs. And the reason why they were box TVs because they contained a lot of wires, components, a lot of lens and mirrors that were responsible for, you know, creating the colors that you've seen on the old-fashioned TVs. Okay, so you know they had color box TVs. You know, at around that time, that's when computers were coming out. Even though I believe computers really started coming out around, you know, the 1980s, even though the screen might have been black and white, computers might have been super slow. But computers back then, at that point, was used to browse the web, you know. But computers was only used by the government around that time. You didn't really see computers in libraries, or, you know, people was not able to buy computers like that around the late 1980s. You know, around the 1980s. Computers were really used by the government. And I'm talking about namely like CIA operatives. Okay. You know, pretty much used by high-ranking government officials in order to keep in contact with, you know, communications. Okay, so, you know, around the 1990s, you know, again, like I said, they had color TVs, you know, they had more advanced vehicles. You know, now around that time, you know, that's when we started seeing That's when we actually started seeing computers and you know, schools, computers in libraries. Of course, these were box screen computers that were made in the, you know, the old-fashioned, you know, computer box. Of course, the internet, you know, was slow, but basically, you know, that's when, you know, the web first came out. People was able to get on the web, you know, websites like MSN, you know, they was able to, you know, because Google was not really big back then. Before Google, you know, there was MSN.com. I don't know if too many people know about that, but, you know, it was known as MSN.com. You know, that was the website people would go to in order to look up, you know, videos, you know, videos on you know, they would look up, they would look up particular topics. They would use it to research particular topics. You know, they would use it to browse video games. They would use the web to look up cheat codes. They would use the web to look up particular movies. This is when you know, the web started becoming big, around the late 1900s. Okay, you know, they had them in schools, and trust me, I know, because when I was a child, you know, I think I was maybe 6 or something like that years old, 7 years old. You know, when I remember being on a computer at one of my schools, one of my preschools, okay. You know, on a computer, I still remember it like yesterday. I was on the computer browsing, you know, I was on MSN.com, you know. I was able to go to the web, you know, that was a really cool thing. That was looked at as a really cool thing, okay. Being able to browse the web and, you know, go to various things like that, you know. But of course, around the time of MSN.com, you know, there was no such thing as YouTube. YouTube did not exist, you know. And a matter of fact, social media websites where you could upload videos such as you know, web pages like YouTube did not exist. There was only web pages that you could go to browse particular things, go to websites or whatnot, you know. So you start to see how, you know, many shall run to and fro and knowledge shall be increased, right? So you start to see how conveniency, now you begin to see how conveniency began to take hold on the world. Whew, now, yeah, you know, I got to sit down, you know. I've been walking to work damn near every day and walking home every day, which are normally like almost a hour and a half walks. So, yeah, you know, I've been doing a lot of walking lately. I have not even been taking the bus. I've just been walking to work and back home from work. Not bragging or anything, but, you know, just to show you, I do a lot of walking. I mean, shit, I must have done over 10 hours of walking this week alone. At least over 10 hours of walking. And that's just to work and back home from work. But now you start to see how conveniency takes hold on the world. You know, telephones began to become convenient to people. You know, because before, telephones were limited to what? People's houses, right? Back then, you had to remember phone numbers or write them down. You know, whenever you was traveling through the city, you had to remember the name of street signs. You had to remember particular addresses so that you didn't get lost. Because if you got lost, that was a serious thing. You couldn't call the police, not unless you went to a neighbor's house and asked for help. You know, I remember, you know, back in the 1900s, people used to always ask for directions. Excuse me, how do I get to such and such? You know, and then they'll give you directions. They'll give you the name of particular streets, addresses. You see, people don't do that anymore. You know why? Because they have GPSs. They have the AI to tell them where and how to get there. But anyways, back to the the late 1900s, 1999, right? They had computers out, the web, and let me tell you something. When I tell you the web made it very convenient for people to look up information, to research particular things, the web became a very, very convenient thing, a part of society. You know? Now, don't get me wrong, people still went to libraries to you know, look into particular books or whatnot. But after a while, man, you know, around the year, 2000, 2001, 2002, the web becomes even more advanced. Now you can actually start looking up particular books over the web. You know, if you wanted more info on a particular thing, instead of going to a book, you just go to msn.com, you know, maybe even Bing. I believe Bing was around that time, but it was not called Bing back then. Okay? You know? But I know MSN was big back then. You know, you went to MSN or whatnot, you know, and pretty much you looked up those particular things, you know? You know, and at that point, at that time, computers started becoming even more, you know, advanced. Talking about the year 2001, the year 2002. Okay, computers became even more advanced because then you was able to put a particular disk into your computer, which the disk contained saved information, saved particular programming, saved particular coding, which allowed you to play. You could play games from that disk. You can know that that disk had particular teaching programs on it that taught you particular things. You know, it had particular programs such as math, you know, social studies, science, biology, art. You know, it was a program where you could use to, you know, edit particular pictures, color over it. Because I remember there used to be coloring books. They used to have Legos, Hot Wheel cars, you know, race cars that ran on batteries. All those things, you know. Train tracks. You see? You know, crossword puzzles, board games. A lot of people done forgot about board games. You know, I remember me and my family used to play board games all the time, man. Matter of fact, there was a board game that my mom had that I used to play with my brother and my sister. We used to play this board game called Monopoly. Okay? Yeah, you know, Monopoly. Ain't that what the so-called elites do to society? This whole world is basically a big monopoly game to the so-called elites. But anyways, you know, me, my mom, my brother and sister, we used to play this board game called Monopoly, you know, and of course you had your $100 bills, your $50 bills, your $20 bills, your $5 bills, and your $1 bills, you know, and then, you know, depending on where the dice landed, such and such, you know, you went up a couple of spaces or whatnot, you know, and bam, you know, I mean, at my school, okay, when I used to go to school, I used to play Connect 4 against particular people. I used to play tic-tac-toe against particular people. We used to play checkers. Eventually, I got into chess. Now, I still know how to play chess to some degree, but I forgot how to play chess. But I used to play chess, you know. I still remember the rook, the bishop, the knight, the king, the queen, the pawns. Okay. Now, I think I still remember how some particular pieces move, you know, but don't quote me on it. But I'm gonna have to re-look into it. I don't want to just, you know, I know there was some chess pieces that moved in the L shape. Some chess pieces was only able to move in a straight line, such as moving diagonally. You know, they would, one chess piece moved diagonally. And then I forgot how the other chess piece moved. Okay. Oh, I believe one chess piece moved in a T shape. One chess piece moved in the T shape. Another chess piece moved diagonally, and then there was another chess piece that moved in the L shape. And then of course the king pretty much could move anywhere. He was not limited, you know. And I think the queen was much similar. And then the pawn pieces, they could only move up one space. And that was either forward, okay, I believe it was forward or left or right. But the pawns were normally the sacrificial pieces for a bigger move. But you know, board games like that, you know. And this was, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, around the year 2000, even around the late 1900s, video games exist, such as the Atari. You know, you hooked it up to the back of your TV and you was able to control this dot that looked like a ship, and basically you had to shoot off all of the other dots before they came down to your ship and destroyed it. You know, I still remember Pac-Man on the Sega Genesis, you know, because when I was a child, I used to have a game system such as the Sega Genesis, you know, where, you know, me and my brother, we would take turns playing Sonic the Hedgehog. You know, we would play Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Sega Genesis, you know, Toy Story, you know. You know, my cousin, he had a Sega Saturn, you know. You know, oh yeah, you know, my mom used to get mad at me because when my cousin used to come over, you know, well, when I was a child, when my brother was younger than I and my sister was younger than I, you know, because I'm pretty much the oldest of my siblings. Well, I'm not the oldest in the family. I have an older brother, you know, he's a piece of shit. I would rather not talk about him, but you know, my mom used to get mad because, you know, my cousin would come over with, you know, Mortal Kombat 2 on the PlayStation, and she didn't like that because of all the blood and gore and shit. Now, I mean, I used to love it, you know, and that was just me being a child, you know. You know, seeing all them fatalities and heads getting chopped off and people arms and legs, people getting chopped to pieces and getting knocked off bridges and falling into the spikes. Yeah, you know. I used to be into that type of stuff, and that's when I was a child. But the point is that, you know, even back then there was game systems, you know, knowledge and knowledge, many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Then of course, you know, you had the computers that was able to read CD discs. You know, how many people still remember the floppy disk? The floppy disk was where you would store all your Word information. Because before Microsoft Word, you know, there was Notepad, there was WordPad, where people would pretty much type up an essay, you know. They would type up an essay, they would type up a story, and then they would save it to a floppy disk. So a floppy disk was kind of like your USB drive back then, you know. Except on a floppy disk, you was only able to save up to 2 megabytes worth of data, which was actually considering a lot, considering that if you was saving data such as Word or Microsoft Word or WordPad, it would normally save like kilobytes worth of data, which kilobytes is less than megabytes, you know. But then, you know, so that was around the early year 2000, 2001, 2002. And then when the year 2006 came around, computers, you know, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, in the early year, in the early year 1000, the early year 2001, 2002, right? Transitioning from 1999, they had something called beepers. They had beepers, they had pagers, where, you know, somebody would pretty much page your particular number. And then the beeper because people used to keep their beepers on the side of their pants, okay? And whenever somebody would page your number, your pager would start to beep, okay? And then it went from that to what? It went to flip phones. That's when, you know, when flip phones first came out, they were super popular. Now, they didn't have the screens where you could play games on it or not or whatnot. Flip phones started off as being a screen that only displayed the number that was calling you. Or, you know, you could browse through your phone, because flip phones were pretty much advanced. You could save numbers in it or whatnot. This was around the time when people began to forget phone numbers, because you had your phone to save your number in it, okay? So again, as technology became more and more convinced, people became more convenient and dependent on technology. Okay, so then going into the year 2006, you know,
computer and technology becomes even more advanced. So do cars, you know. People started driving sports cars. Cars started looking more cooler, more faster, more advanced, you know. You had your PS2s out, because in the early year 2001, they already had PlayStations. You know, they had the PS1, they had the Nintendo, the Dreamcast. They had they had DVD players. You know, your DVD player could actually play movies from CDs. So instead of videotapes, instead of watching TVs, instead of watching movies from video cassettes, you could watch movies from CDs. And then eventually, you know, the year 2008, they came out with Blu-rays, you know. So in the year 2006 is 2005 into the year 2006, right? That's when, you know, YouTube came around. YouTube was a lot more freer. You could do a lot more things on YouTube. Google was around, but Google was not tyrannical like it is now. You know, you went on Google. You know, Google was still like the go-to place where you can go to things. You know, they also have social media outlets such as, you know, MySpace. You know, MySpace. You know, this is where, you know, division started coming along, because, you know, people started going on MySpace to basically share their personal lives and tell people, you know, share with their friends, you know, what they, especially people who have friends, you know, who basically graduated from high school or college, and they basically ended up, you know, moving to a different state. You know, they was able to stay, instead of staying in touch with their friends by using a phone, they could stay in touch with their friends using MySpace. How about that, huh? You know, because before Facebook, before Instagram, you know, before you know, fans only, before any of that shit, there was MySpace. Okay, and MySpace was big back then. A lot of people started hopping on MySpace, you know, to share pictures of what they were eating, share pictures of particular locations of where they were at, you know. And this was around what, the year 2006, and I believe I graduated in the year 2006. I graduated from high school in the year 2006, and I was very young too when I graduated. Okay, but I was very young actually, because I was a very smart person in school, very smart. I was especially good at math, man. I can't tell you how smart I was at math, and this was when I was a young teenager. Okay, I was able to solve 2-digit multiplication problems in my head quickly, bam, like at the snap of a finger. 10 times 10 is 100. 10 times 20 is 200. Okay, such and such, you know. And, you know, my classmates were you know, even they would often marvel at me, at how smart I was at math. So I was really good at math. Algebra was easy to me. Geometry was easy to me. Subtraction, addition, multiplication, division, all that was easy to me in math. Okay? Okay, what was that? I believe at the age of 13 or 14, I was already doing 10-digit math problems. Okay, so, but I'm still am good at math actually, and it's spiritual, because the Hebrew word for math is what? Amath, which is where you get the word truth from. So, around the year 2006, technology becomes even more advanced. You got advanced vehicles, you got advanced phones. I believe that's when smartphones first started coming out. Well, no. Well, yeah, I believe so, but I believe they were much bigger and they were much slower. But people had flip phones and shit. But then eventually, it went from flip phones to what? To smartphones. You had your flat screen. But don't get me wrong, flip phones became more advanced, because on flip phones, you was able to, flip phones had screens on it where you could play games on it. You could browse particular things like Notepad. Some particular flip phones had notepads on it. It had particular games on it. And then, that's when Nokia first came out. Oh yeah, that's right, because but before smartphones, there was handheld phones such as Nokia, which were basically phones. They were not flip phones, but they were like handheld phones that had screens on it. Like basically colored screens. So Nokia came out with that, and then it was Samsung. Okay. Then eventually T-Mobile came along with more advanced flip phones and handheld phones. And then after that came what? The year 2010. Computers become even more advanced. And I believe before 2010, they had flat screens. Check that out. Flat screen TVs. Okay? Now they used to have 50-inch flat screen TVs, but TVs went from being box TVs to flat screen TVs. Okay? And these were the first TVs to be able to display movies, video games, shows, cartoons or whatnot in HD, high definition. So, people started buying flat screen TVs, and, around that time, that's when people's houses were getting broken into, their TVs and merchandise were being stolen. That covetous spirit was out there, people was getting robbed for their phones, their jewelry, all over what? Technology, over money. Okay? This was around what? The year 2009 going into the year 2010 when flat screen TVs started to become popular. And of course, they still had the handheld phones, but around the year 2010, that's when smartphones started coming out, and people thought that shit was super cool, Oh yeah, we can't forget about how computers went from box screens to laptops, where you could literally, laptops had flat screens, you could fold them up, okay? They had flat screens, you could fold up your laptop, you could take it with you wherever you want it. And I believe flat screen laptops came out around the year 2006 going into 2007. How's it going? Flat screen laptops came out around that time, So people started buying laptops. Why? Because laptops was something that you could bring with you wherever you wanted, Because with a box screen computer, you could not take that with you wherever you wanted. That was restricted to your home, unless you had a car. But come on, who's going to take a box screen computer out of their home, bring it over to their job and go through all the trouble of hooking it up when you could just have a flat screen laptop that you could fold up, right? A flat screen laptop that you could fold up, you could put it into your laptop bag and boom, bam, easy. It's light, you can carry it with you. Conveniency, right? Conveniency. And around that time, around, what was it? I believe around the year 2000, around the year 2005, that's when credit cards first started coming out. Credit cards started coming out around the really early year 2000s. And people started falling in love with credit cards, people started falling in love with credit cards. Why? Because it allowed you to make payments electronically, You didn't have to go through the trouble of having to go through your wallet, count your money, see how much money you wanted to give to your cashier. You just went through one swipe and bam, look at that. Bam, paid for, And plus on top of that, credit cards were also popular because it was linked to your bank account. So no matter how much money you had in the bank, as long as you had money in the bank, all you had to do was swipe and boom, was paid for. Okay? So credit cards came out around the early year 2000s. I'm talking about year 2003, the year 2005, somewhere along them lines. Trust me, I know, because my mom had a credit card. And this is when I was very young. Okay, my mom had a credit card, and she used to always use her credit card to pay for food, and she used to buy us clothes with that money, with her credit card or whatnot. She used to do those things using her credit card. Okay, so here it is. we're around the year 2010, you know, credit cards become more advanced. Because now, you didn't have to pay for things that was based on credit. You had debit cards, you had MasterCards. So debit cards allowed you to make payments without having to worry about without having to worry about an overdraft. Okay? Because if there was an overdraft, you have to pay that back with interest. So debit cards allowed you to make payments without having to worry about an overdraft. So debit cards became popular. Even though you was limited to how much money you could store on a card. See? So, there was debit cards. Then, the year 2012 come along, I mean, of course, before the year 2012, you had the smartphones and all this other stuff. You had the touch pads, which the smartphones and touch pads were very popular because all you had to do was touch the screen and you could literally interact with your phone. And that was just by touching the screen. So imagine how mesmerized people were. So smartphones were very convenient to people because you could save phone numbers in there. And not only could you save phone numbers, but it had a built-in caller ID, just like the flip phones, just like the Nokia handheld phones. You could save phone numbers in there. And in a matter of fact, with smartphones, you didn't even have to, worry about remembering phone numbers anymore. All you had to do was look up the person's name, touch the screen where the person's name was, and the phone will automatically call the number for you. Now, of course, the number will show up underneath the person's name, but still, you see, you can still call people by that. And guess what? Another reason why smartphones were popular was because you could browse the web. You could browse the internet using smartphones. Now, of course, just like, the old-fashioned phones like the handheld Nokias with the screen on it, you had to buy minutes. Because remember, with flip phones and with Nokia phones, you had to buy minute cards. And depending on how many minutes you had, determine how long you could talk on the phone. So you could make phones wirelessly, right? As long as you had the minutes on it. But smartphones were even more popular because you could browse the web with your phone. You could browse the internet, you could look up videos, you could watch videos. They had built-in cameras. So smartphones became more popular than camcorders because your smartphone had a built-in camera on it. How convenient is that? You don't even have to worry about having a camcorder anymore or a camera in order to take pictures or record your family life. You can use your phone to do it. So how convenient is that? So now, moving all the way up to the year 2020, we have cards with chips on the front of them. So now all you have to do is take your card, insert it into the chip slot, and make payments that way. Technology becomes even more advanced, and what do we see? Now we got people making payments just by waving their phone over scanners. We got people who can buy things using their phone. We got people who can buy things simply by waving their card over the scanner. We got people with chips in them that can unlock the doors to their cars. That can turn on their car just by waving their hand over their car. We got people who can open up doors just by waving their hand with the chip in it, opening doors just by waving their hand over the sensor. So we can see where conveniency and technology is leading society. So now you can see why a lot of people is going to take the mark of the beast, which is the CHIP, because of conveniency. Because they're not going to have to worry about losing their wallet. They're not going to have to worry about identity theft. They're not going to have to worry about, somebody using their credit card without their permission and buying things. They're not going to have to worry about that. All your money, all your finances, your transaction history, your medical history, your social security number, your identification number, your universal product code, everything will be on that chip. How convenient is that? And that's why a lot of people is going to get, hey, at Walmart, they already have a particular section called Scan and Go, where you basically scan your object, basically using your phone. No, Scan and Go is all about you paying with your phone. Boom, already paid for. You're free to go. So they already have a section at Walmart called Scan and Go, where basically, you pay using your phone through a sensor, and bam, shit paid for, you're free to go. Now imagine when people get the chip. Sorry, sir, you cannot go to the section because it is Scan and Go. This is only for people who either have the chip or who could basically use Apple Pay using their phone. So a lot of people is going to take the chip because of conveniency, and it's going to lead to what? Their woe, abadium. Okay, it's going to lead right to their destruction. So, with that, I pray and hope that you sincere brothers and few sisters have been edified through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. With that, I'm going to say shalom. So on to the next one.